Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar about implementing email marketing. This webinar is basically the same talk that I gave at the Dynamicweb Tech Conference 2014, where we will be going through the email marketing module and the different facets of that. Today we will be talking about me as a first thing. I'm Jeppe. My name is Jeppe, as I said. I'm a senior tech lead for email marketing. I put my email address up there. If you have any questions about the module, you can ask me, or you can ask on our forums. I'm active on there as well, so that will probably be your best bet. Today we'll be going through the email marketing module, how it relates to content, statistics, and we'll be talking about advanced features. And if there's time towards the end, we'll look a little bit at the extensibility features that are available for this module. All right, and with that, let's go into a demo. So I have a Dynamicweb solution here. This is basically just a free 2014. This is a new licensing module. I'm logged in as administrator, and I just have a little bit of content. I'll get back to this in just a moment. But the email marketing module is located under online marketing, and we have our own node here. So what you're presented with first off is a tree structure. And this tree structure gives you the option of organizing your emails into folders. So let me just create a new top folder here, and then I'm presented with a new set of options. So I can give the folder a name, and to stick with the theme of the rest of the presentation, I'll just call it Rebel Alliance Mails, and I can set a from name. It's the Rebel Alliance, yes, and I can say the email address is the no reply at rebelalliance.com. Basically, this is information that will be automatically added to all emails that I create from this folder. I can also give it a subject. I could call it news from the Alliance. I can set up a domain. I can set other settings like render content specific for each recipient. I can set some generic unsubscribe information, and I can set the engagement index. All these more advanced features I'll get back to in just a second, but the important thing is the general, that is information that is passed along to all of the emails created from this folder. So when I save this, I now have this folder where I can start creating new emails. So let me do that real quick. I say just a new blank, and then you can see I had a spelling error there, so I can say news now, but it already picked up that I said new from the Alliance on my top folder. So let me just create this email. So now I'm presented with the edit email screen. From here I can start adding my recipients. I can do that either one recipient at a time, or I can add a group. And let me just add a small group here, 250 recipients, and you'll notice that it says there are 250 recipients with consent. Basically, this means that there are 250 users in total in what I've selected in this box that says it's okay to send emails to us. It's also picked up the name and the email from my top folder. I can add a pre-header, just say news from the Alliance. Basically, the pre-header is something that would appear in your email client just below the from and subject. Usually you can find a small piece of text there. If there's no dedicated pre-header, it will usually take the first piece of text that it finds, so therefore it's a good idea to add the pre-header. Then I need to select the content that I want to send, and I do that by selecting a page from my my content structure. So let me just pick one page here, and then you can notice that there's this domain drop down below it. The domain basically tells email marketing how to build absolute URLs. So all the links from this page that might be internal. They need to have a domain for the absolute URLs that the user will click in his email client. But the reason you can select this is because you might want to, say, send a page from a different website. So you can select which domain matches the website that you want to send. And in this case, I have the tech email local, and I have a my tech presentation domain set on my solution. And if I select the my tech presentation, I'm presented with a warning that says this is not the primary domain for the selected page, and we recommend that you use the primary domain. This is for statistics and referrers' sake, but it's not needed. If you specifically want this domain, you can do that. So that's the basic presentation. You can also do split tests, and the way you do that is simply check this box, say I want a split test variation. Then I can manipulate the values that I want my split test to be based on. Let's say I want the from name to be your friendly Rebel Alliance instead, and maybe that would give me more conversions. I can also change the pre-header or the subject or even the content if I so choose. And when I've then set up my basic information, then I need to specify the split test parameters. In this case, I need to specify how many do I want to include in my split test sample. In this case, it would be 10%. I can also say what are my conversion goals. In this case, I can choose one, either the engagement or opened or clicked. I can say when to start it, and I can say if I want to end it at a specific time or manually. And if I want to conclude the split test automatically, do I want to notify some people that this has happened? But if I don't want a split test, I just want a regular email, I can just go and click Send Now. All right, so that is a basic setup of emails. And you notice that I've added a group to my recipients list. But how do I actually create recipients that I can use in email marketing? So let's take this group that I have. You can see I have added a lot of users, and let's just look at one of them. There's one field in particular that is of interest when we're using this for email, and this is this user accepted communication methods. If this email box is not ticked, then it will be impossible to send emails to them using the regular recipient provider. You can create your own recipient provider, but I'll get back to that later. All right, so now that I have a lot of recipients, I also want some content. You saw me just pick the front page before, but maybe that's not optimized for email. A lot of email clients will have specific requirements of what you can use. It's very limited. You cannot use the full-fledged web handles that you always have available in a modern browser. Like JavaScript is a no-go, and external CSS would also be a no-go. You'd need to include it all in your template. So we need to create a content that is related to email. And what we can usually do is you can find templates all over the web. I've just found one at this place called CakeMail. This one, I thought it looked fine, so I could just go and download it. I've already done this, so I'm not going to do it right now for you. But I can create a new page that is basically just a page with some content on it. And then I can say which layout do I want to use for this. And like I said, I've already downloaded the one that I'm going to use. This is the one called Index. Let me just show you what it looks like. This is just downloaded from their page. So I have here a template that has CSS in the top, and it also has a lot of inline CSS down here. So I could start editing this email and add the relevant tags. For instance, for this title, maybe I wanted the subject of my email, so I could do that. And notice there's a new notation here with the double curly braces. So I'll just add the tag for, so this is the message, the subject, and then I'll just end my curly braces. Oh, sorry, there are only two there. And the available tags I've had, I have an article on our developer site that I'll just show you here. It's under the documentation, how-to guides, and online marketing. You'll see there's a working with placeholders. That's what we call them. There's an article here about what they are, how to use them, and which placeholders are available. So you can go look at that in order to see what you can use. So I'll just select this layout for my page, and basically what I now have is the option of sending a page that has the title of the subject of my email. Most of the time you would want to manipulate your template in order to be able to add the content dynamically. And that is one of the reasons why this is a good thing to do, because you can leverage the all-in-one platform, where if you have email content that is originating from e-commerce, you can do that. If you want other type of CMS content that you have available in your dynamic web, basically anything that you can publish to your front end, you would also be able to publish into an email if you wanted to. Okay, but I've created another page. This is the one called SW item based. So I've created an item in my management center here, the one called newsletter, and it has these fields in it, basically just a logo and a lot of headers and some box information, and I've created a page based on that. If I want to create a page based on an item and just a regular paragraph page, I may want to go and change my editor configuration, because if I add the email values or change my drop-down to the one called email.js, I have a lot of information. I have a drop-down with the tags available to me in my content editor. Basically, let me just show you here quickly. So if I check this, you see I have here the username. If I wanted a different one, I could just select it from this drop-down, and I have his name, I have his address, I have zip code, I have a lot of information. And this list is being extended. We continually add new elements to this list, so you have all of these placeholders available to you where you edit your content. But right now I'm using the item-based, and you'll see I still use the same notation in here. This is basically because the content is being rendered by the internal template engine in Dynamicweb, and once we have an output that has these placeholders in it, we replace that with the recipient specific or the email specific information that we have available at email time. All right, so what do we do then when we send it? Let me just go back, create a new email called latest news, and then I select a specific user. This is going to take just a moment because I have more than 250,000 users in my database. When it pops up, I'll just select a user right there, and I'll just verify that everything else is correct. I'll just say news from the Alliance, and then I select my page that I created. It's my item based, and everything looks fine to me, so I'll just send it now. Now it's preparing the recipients, and it says that it's sent the email. And if I check my Outlook here, you can see I have the Rebelize. This is my preview, and I'll just download the pictures in order to get open information. And here I have my information basically out of my content page. I have a link here from basically I'm a Star Wars nerd, so I like this stuff. So now I've clicked the link, I've opened the email, I've looked at some stuff. So let me look at what the statistics looks like, because this is the interesting part of an email. Once we've sent it out, that's fine and good. Now we want to see how do people interact with our content once we've sent it to them. So let me just click this one, and it will look at all the recipients and all the actions that happened. So if I look at my highlights, I can see that it was opened. I sent to one person, and it was opened 100%. There was a lot of clicks, or rather there was one click, but that's a lot for one recipient. I have total clicks, I have a total opens, I have a list of links, I have an overview of my recipients and what they basically did. So I can see that this recipient opened it twice, clicked one link, and he got an engagement of this value here. I can also see the total of the entire email. I can see some browser and platform activities. But the interesting thing is the link box up here. And you saw me click the link for the YouTube. So let me just click this here. So now I can get a detailed statistic of basically what happened with this link. So this recipient clicked this link one time. And if there were other links in the same email, you'll see how many times he clicked those. And I can see what link if I click it, I can follow the link and see where it actually leads. I can also see more detailed statistics of the given recipient. So this recipient, I can see that he's received 2 emails. I can also see when that was. I can see what he's done with this email, when he opened it. I can see which links he's clicked, and I can see which emails he's received. All right, so that is basically the statistics, and we can give you a really good statistics, a rich statistic, because this is the all-in-one platform where you can utilize the statistics from your e-commerce in order to check what happened with their shopping cart. Basically, if you send them an offering via email, you probably want to see as many of those recipients actually purchase something on your website, and you can follow that here. And that's because we have everything in the same platform. All right, so that was a quick overview of the basic functionality. We also have some more advanced functionality, and starting with saving as a template, because sometimes you might want to say, okay, this is not actually from the Rebel Alliance, but it might be from the Empire. So this is Empire News, and it's not from the Rebel Alliance, it's from the Empire. And it's a different email address maybe. And if I say advanced save as template, I can do that, and I can say that this is the Empire template. So now I have my edit template that is based on a different set of basic values. So I can now, if I create a new email here, even though I have my Rebel Alliance folder, maybe we're playing both sides, so I can say I want to use the Empire template, and now it's created an email for me with the basic values from that template. So that is a way of, if I have some basic information that I use a lot of the time, like I have a setup, but sometimes I want some of the values to change, I can create a template that I can use as my starting point. You can also add tracking information, and tracking information is basically a way of adding this statistic information into a different source. Let's say you use Google Analytics on your website. Maybe you want to track the information there as well. You can do that simply by selecting the Google Analytics tracking, and then you can add the campaign source, medium, and the campaign, and the term and the content. Basically, you have all the 5 elements that Google allows you to use in Google Analytics, and you can use that here. We talked about the placeholders before. You can use your placeholders in here. So if you maybe want to include in your campaign, you want to include the subject, you can do that simply by doing like this. and the subject. So if I do that, then this information will be processed as well, so you can add dynamic values to your tracking information. You can also add dynamic values to the subject. You can either do that by typing them in manually, or you can use this little helper here, where you can say, okay, maybe I want to say, let me just fix this, maybe I want to say dear, and then the name. If I do that, then it will insert the correct tag for me. So if I don't know the correct tag for the user's name, then I can use this little helper over here. I also mentioned the engagement index. Engagement index is a way of saying certain types of interaction, they give a higher value. So let's say unsubscribe, that is a negative value because we don't want them to unsubscribe from our emails. But if they place an order, then they get some, they actually get the order value. If they add a product to the cart, then for each product they get a certain amount of points. They also get some points for opening the email, and I can manipulate these as I see fit. If I have a content select, let me just select a piece of content here, just the front page. And if I click the engagement again, it will analyze my page, and it will find all the links that I have on there, and it will say, okay, if a user clicks this specific link, how many points does he get then? So that's a way for me to really work with engagement and see how are my recipients actually engaging with me. Okay, so we also talked about the recipients. So let's say I select a large group with, in this case, 250,000 recipients. Mostly, we haven't actually seen any recipient collection this big yet, except in test scenarios. But at some point they might see. I think we've seen about 75,000 up to this point. So you might be thinking, well, what about performance, and what about the site when this process starts? Does it destroy the performance, and what happens then if I've sent to the first 10,000 and they start clicking on links, and I'm still sending to the rest of the 65,000, and then what happens to those recipients? So let me just start this. Just start it to send, and basically what it does now, it's looking through all these 250,000 recipients, and it's preparing them for sending, but it's not actually starting the send process yet. But it will do in just a minute. But this is basically the pre-process state. So you've seen now it started. It's already sent 404, and if I click send, then it will continue to rise. And you can see my site is still fairly responsive, and even though this is happening in the background, and that is because we basically yield the background threads when something else is going on. So let's say the front end needed some resources because now it's being hammered by visits. Basically, the email threads, they will say, I am now not as important as the front end, so it will say if the front end needs more performance, then I will just kick back. So basically, it will just yield the process to the front end. But now you're probably wondering, okay, I have 250,000 that I'm sending to. Why am I doing that? Why am I destroying the host Nordic mail server? And the reason is that I'm actually not. What I'm doing is maybe just wait a minute for the statistics to calculate. There we go. We have a concept called delivery providers. Delivery providers are a way of specifying a different way of sending the email other than just using the standard website email setup. So we have the Dynamicweb send provider. This is the one that uses the website. This is a standard that cannot be removed. I've created two other. In this case, I've created a save, which is the one that I'm using. It's currently saving 250,000 emails to my disk. I also have one for SendGrid. And let's just try and create a new one. So I have these two available for me to create new ones. So if I have multiple SendGrid accounts, I can add those. just add my username and password for each of those, and then I have a time zone. This is relevant. The two information boxes here at the bottom where I select the time zone and a bounce window, those information are relevant if the time setup for the SendGrid account is different from the server time zone setup. So let's say I have a SendGrid account and I haven't changed anything. It's using an American time zone. So I would have to select the correct time zone that corresponds with my setup and then select a bounce window. This is if I can see that the send time of my emails is vastly different than the send time that I have locally. Then I can adjust this to match. Usually 60 minutes is a bit much. You'd probably say something in the order of 5 minutes is what we want. So I can create multiple of these delivery providers. We have more on the way. We have one for Mandrill, I think they're called. It's the MailChimp mail service. We have one for that one coming. And you can create your own if you want to. I can show you that in just a minute. I think we have time. We also have a way of specifying recipients. So let me just create a new email here. And we have a recipient provider. By standard, we use the Dynamicweb users. This is the selector we have right here where I can select my users or my groups, or I can even create a smart search. I haven't talked about smart search, so let me just do that real quick. I have created one called the Skywalker family. Basically what this does is it finds all users in my database, has the name Skywalker in their username or in their name, and then it finds all of those with consent. So it finds 2, and only one of them says it's okay to send emails. Let me just show you what it looks like. So editing the smart search basically looks like this. So I've said name contains Skywalker, and then it will find 2, and of those 2, only 1. But let's say I have a more specific requirement that I cannot solve with a smart search. Maybe I have an external source for my recipients, a web service of some sort, or maybe they are stored in a file on disk or something. So I can select a different recipient provider. The one that we include is the abandoned recipient provider, and I'll just get back to that in a second. But you can also create your own. Basically, if you, like I said, if you have a web service, you can create a recipient provider that connects to that web service and pulls recipients from there. All right, but the recipient provider, the abandoned cart recipients is one that we provide along with the regular Dynamicweb user. The abandoned cart, you can say, when do we perceive a cart to be abandoned? So if we have a visitor on our website, he starts putting stuff in his cart, and then 3 hours later he still hasn't completed this, or he hasn't had any activity on that cart for 3 hours, then we might want to do something, because he might be a potential customer and we potentially would want him to buy stuff. So we can say, okay, after 3 hours and not more than 24 hours, I can also select no limit if I want to look through my entire back catalog of orders. And I can say only from this shop. This is a new setting basically for selecting a more narrow set of cards. So I can say it's only cards from a specific shop or cards in a specific language. I can also say that I require that the customer was logged in when this happens. This has to do with the user acceptance. So you can add in your either in your terms of service on your website or on your sales terms. You can say that if you do this, then we possibly send you an email for uncompleted orders. So you can say whatever is required here, if they were logged in or if they accepted the sale terms, or either one of those basically. So if I do this, you'll notice that the user selector goes away, and it's saying that I'm using a custom recipient provider. And this is because we cannot select anything manually. This is all it happens inside the recipient provider. So those are the standard features. And like I said, you can add your own delivery providers. You can add your own recipient providers from code. I can show you the implementation of one that that we have created already. I have my recipient provider for something that's coming up for people who didn't do anything. If you send an email to them and they didn't open it, they didn't click any link in it, you might want to say, okay, after 3 days, I'll send them a follow-up email, say, did you actually mean what you said? So, rather, did you not see our email or something like that? So this is basically all you need to do, is you create a class that inherits from the email recipient provider. Then you override the get recipients, and that's it. Basically, the base class looks like this. So you have the recipients that you must override, and you have the context. This is for recipient specific context that I'll get back to in just a second. And then you have an option of doing a custom unsubscribe action. And you also have access to the email that you're providing recipients for. So that's basically it. So what we've done is we've implemented this one, where we just say, okay, for the recipients of the email that I'm selecting, which ones didn't open, and the ones who didn't open, I'll add them to a new recipient collection, and then I'll return that to the system. Basically, what happens from this point in, the recipient provider doesn't care about. It just provides a collection of recipients that will be returned to the email that will be used for the recipient there. And the same goes with the delivery provider. Those are in a different namespace. I have them here. This is the base class. The only thing that you need to override is the deliver method. And let me just look at the save provider. This is a very basic one. I select a save folder, and then I can save my email just using regular code in here. If I have a different provider that I'm integrating to, let's say SendGrid, I overwrite the deliver method as well. I create my SMTP client, add some credentials. These are what you type in, and then we use the SMTP client to send the mail message. All right, so I talked about the recipient-specific content. I can set it on the top folder. I have the option of saying that content in this top folder has recipient-specific content. And if I do that, then each recipient will have content generated for them. This is useful for the abandoned cart provider. Another thing that is also useful for the abandoned cart provider is being able to have an email repeat itself. So if I create an email saying this is abandoned cart, then I don't want to select any specific recipients. I want those to come from my recipient provider, the abandoned cart. And I say this is fine. And I want to say this is from web shop. And then I select a page. Now I don't have a page right now, but I'll just select one in the interim. And then I can see that this has recipient-specific content selected. This is under Advanced and Content Settings. But if you set it on the top folder, this will automatically be set. All right, so I have my email almost set up. What I need now is a page to render the content. Basically what I want is an option of rendering the order that the customer left behind. So let me just say it's the abandoned carts page. And I'll just add a new paragraph. It's called cards something, and add a module. And the module that I'm looking for is this context order renderer. So if I add this, I select the template, and I just click Save and Close. That's basically it. That's all I need to do. Now I have this module. This will render this template based on the abandoned order, and the order comes from email marketing. So I have my draft, the abandoned cart. Just select the correct page now. I do that. And then I want to set it up as being a recurring email. I do that by selecting the scheduled settings, and I can say when do I want this to start? Maybe this is a campaign that runs for a month. Maybe it's something that runs for ever. But it's something that I want to repeat at a given interval. So I say, okay, how often do I want to check for abandoned carts? That might be once every hour. And then I have the option of selecting an end time. I'll just click schedule, and it'll ask me if I really mean that. And then I'll click OK. And now I have my abandoned carts, and it's in my scheduled folder, and it's a recurring email starting at this specific point. And I can infer from the sent start that it hasn't found any abandoned recipients yet, or it hasn't checked for them at least. So that's the basic functionality. Some of the stuff that is coming up is an option of selecting more actions on unsubscribe. So if you select the Dynamicweb users right now, it'll just uncheck the email allowed that you saw on the user. We are adding an option in 8.4.1 to remove users from groups and uncheck custom fields on the user. So let's say I use custom fields to, or maybe I use groups to maintain my structure. So let's say I have a web shop DK, and I also have maybe a UK web shop. So I have two groups like this, and all the recipients from my Danish web shop, they are in this group, and all the recipients from my UK web shop are in this group. So let's say I send an email to the web shop UK, but when they unsubscribe, I don't want them to actually unsubscribe from all emails from the system, because the user is this checkbox basically says, can we send emails to them or not? But if this is not checked, then we cannot send to them at all. Let me just add a few users to this group. Just add one or two. This is going to take just a second. Hopefully, there we go. Just select this one, and that's fine. So if I have an email that's set up, let's say I'm sending to my DK web shop. Create a new one here. And the group that I've selected is the this is not the one. This is the one that I want. So I've selected my group called DK groups, the web shop DK. This is the web that the mail that I'm sending out. Maybe I'm creating a copy of this and resending it every once in a while. But I don't want the recipients that say I don't want from this web shop, or I don't want to receive this type of email from you. Then in 8.4.1 we've added the option of actually removing them from this group, so they'll be gone in the future. So that's one of the things that we've added, and that's also one of the ways that you can manage your groups for let's say you have multiple lists from the old newsletter v3. So that's one way you could manage those using email marketing. One thing to note, though, is that this is not available until 8.4.1. Until then, the email allowed checkbox will be unchecked when they unsubscribe. All right, so that's reached the end of my presentation, and I've saved all the questions for this time. So let me see if I can find them. I can see that there are some questions. There might be a lot. Just one second. All right. All right. Allow backend login is enabled. No, that's not a question. So there's a question from Nuno. According to the EU directive, where do we get a log of subscription, unsubscription, and double opt-in date time log? Well, we have a log of when they unsubscribed. It's not basically available until you actually look at the statistics, and we can do. Let me just show you here. If I go to the email that I sent, I think it was this one. So I have an option of exporting my results. So if my user unsubscribed, then it will be in my export. You see it under was it in highlights? No, I can't remember. Recipient responses. This one. So if I click that, I can get it. I can also get all of them. Basically, I get a CSV file in which I can check. All right. So. Do you collect bounce statistics, hard, soft? No, we don't do that. But then that is a limitation on the web cluster that most Dynamicweb solutions use. It's not possible to get that from the host Nordic SMTP cluster. But if you use SendGrid or Mandrill once that's available, or maybe even another third-party delivery provider, then you can implement interfaces. Let me just show you that quickly. Here for the delivery providers, we have these 4 interfaces that you can implement. And when you implement one of these, then our system will know that your delivery provider is capable of providing bounce information, basically querying SendGrid or Mandrill or whatever external party you use. Let me just show you the SendGrid. So we implement these 4 interfaces, and then we have a way of getting that information from SendGrid. And the same thing goes, of course, for Mandrill. Okay, so that was the last question that I see on the list. Oh, maybe there was an extra one. Is it possible to see the total turnover statistics from e-commerce? Well, not currently, no, but we are looking into ways of changing the current the whole Dynamicweb statistics interface. And of course, it would be logical to include the email information into that as well. We're doing a more centralized way where you can see everything. But for now, the email statistics is basically limited to the one email that you're looking at the moment. So there's a question here about rendering content for recipients. Can we deliver content by profiles according to the user's profile? Well, you can do a custom recipient provider that can look that information up, but we don't have any recipient provider that can do that for you. You could probably do a smart search that will select specific profiles, and then have a module. The abandoned cart thing that I showed you is basically just a module that looks at a context object, and we can do that for all types of information. We're doing that as well for users, as just a side note there. But that would be the way you would do it. Do a smart search, and then have your template be specific for that user information there. Let's see, there's one question here. Can you tell everyone on the importance of understanding DNS with DKIM key? Well, yes, of course. There are some spamming going on the internet. Maybe you've noticed this. And one way of trying to sort of stop this is not being able to try and be someone that you're not. So let's say you're sending a lot of emails using a custom provider like SendGrid or Mandrill or whatever provider you're using, and you're saying that the sender email is basically it's dynamicweb.com, but I'm using the Mandrill.com mail server to send it. There's a discrepancy there. So what I can do is I can say that this is on behalf of, and that's basically a setting that you can either do an SFP, I think it's called, the SFP record, or you can do a DKIM, and those are settings that you do on your DNS, and you set it up on your provider in your account on SendGrid or Mandrill or whatever you use. Oh, okay. So there was a follow-up from on the profiles. So you're talking about rendering pages and paragraphs specific to a profile. Well, we cannot do that at the moment, but it's something that we are going to be able to do, because when you do render content specific for the recipients, we basically have a user, or if you use the Dynamicweb users recipient provider, then we have a user from Dynamicweb, and we are working on a way of actually having the pages rendered in the context of that user. So basically saying the user that is currently active in this on this page is this one, and that will give you the profiles, but it's not directly available right now. It's something that we're working on. It's not something that will be available in 8.4.1, but I'm hoping 8.5. Okay, so there was a follow-up on the turnover. Is it possible to see how much turnover an email has generated? Well, you can see for the email on this statistics page, you can see the order value. So you can see for each recipient how much did they purchase, for the order amount, the total order amount that you have there. You can also see it in the export. It's also available there. It's not highlighted as a value in its own right, but it is something that you can infer from either adding up all of these, or you can get it from the export. It might be something that we can add to the engagement, the total turnover of this email, but it's not something that we have at the moment. Can I send a test mail? Yes, I already did that once. I don't know if you saw it, this one right here. This is basically the one that where I created an item and I sent it to myself. Is there anything more specific you'd like to see? Just, while we're waiting for an maybe a follow-up on that, let me just show you. Whoa, sorry, this is not the one. This is the browser that I'm using. Let me just what was it I wanted to? Actually, I wanted to show the code. So, like I said, we have the delivery providers and we have recipient providers. A new concept coming in 8.4.1 is a resend provider, which is basically a way to say unresponsive recipients. I showed you the recipient provider, but we are also creating something called a resend provider. This basically gives you the option of, so let's say I have this email where no one opened it. I could right-click it, and then I'd have a new context menu here where I can say resend to the unresponsive. And basically what we do is we pick up all the ones who didn't open or send, and we create a copy of this email, and we attach the recipient provider. And this is also something that you can extend. That will be available from 8.4.1. So let's see. Okay, so Okay, so the follow-up to that is, I mean, can a user send a mail to himself instead of a whole group? So you're basically talking about preview. Yeah, I didn't mention that at all, but we do have preview functionality, and we are working on integrating into something called Litmus, and there's another one that I can't remember the name of at the moment. But as you can see, I have here a preview button. Let me just get an email that is, oh, select a recipient. Yeah, this takes a few seconds, unfortunately. So I'll select a user and I'll select the page, and then I have my preview available to me. And if I click this, I can say, who do I want to preview as, and how do I want to preview it? Do I want to preview it in an email? Then I'll just type in my email address and click send. I can also preview it in a browser, and I can generate a file that I can preview in any way I want. So is that what you meant, Remy? Yeah, Litmus and email on Asset. That's true. Those are the ones that we're talking about. Thanks, Nuno. All right. So it seemed that it was the preview that Remy was referring to there. All right. It seems that we've gone a little over time. I hope I haven't taken up too much of your rest of your workday. But I thank you for joining this this presentation, this webinar. So questions, we've done those. This is not actually relevant anymore. So I'll just say thanks for stopping by, and this video will be available sometime either today or tomorrow on our Vimeo. So you can check it out there if you want. If you have any questions, contact us on the forum or send me an email if you want. And thank you.